Starting off at number 10, we have the Perron family. In January of 1971, the Perron family moved into a farmhouse in Rhode Island, where Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters began to notice strange things happening. Carolyn would find things had been moved around, scratched, and broken with no explanation. Later on, beds would rise off the floor and objects would be tossed around the rooms. At one point, a seance was conducted, during which Carolyn Perron became momentarily possessed and spoke in tongues while her chair rose from the ground and her body was flung across the room. Strangely, the family continued to live in the house until they were able to move in 1980. All right, up next we have the case of Dr. Richard Gallagher and Julia. In 2008, a board-certified psychiatrist, Richard Gallagher, declared that his patient, known only as Julia, had experienced a case of possession. Julia claimed to be the queen of a satanic cult and was convinced she was being attacked by a demon. Gallagher met with her and ruled out mental illness when he observed Julia enter trance-like states, items flying off the shelves in his office, Julia speaking in tongues, and blurting out private details about his life that she couldn't possibly have known. Julia was eventually exorcised, allegedly spewing threats, levitating, exhibiting super strength, and influencing the temperature of the room. All right, our next case is that of Anna Eklund. Anna Eklund's possession spanned several decades, beginning in 1912 when she was just 14 years old. Anna's demonic possession was reportedly the result of a curse put on the devout Catholic in 1908 by her father and her aunt Mina. The first exorcism performed on Eklund in 1912 was successful for a time, but Eklund would be possessed again by even more demons in 1928. Her second exorcism, which lasted 3 sessions, was held at a convent and was so grueling it resulted in the deterioration of Anna's body. The demons were eventually exorcised and Anna went on to live her life, get this, with only milder possessions after. All right, up at number 7, we have the case of Clara Germana Seeley. Clara Germana Seeley, a 16-year-old student, was allegedly possessed in the late summer of 1906 after making a pact with the devil. Clara's behavior began to become erratic and intensified, with witnesses claiming that she developed a strong aversion to holy objects, tore at her clothes, talked to things that weren't visible, and growled like an animal. She also gained knowledge of other languages, levitated up to 5 feet off the ground, exhibited superhuman strength, and relayed personal information about others that she shouldn't have been able to know. 2 priests performed an exorcism that lasted 2 days before she was freed of the demon. All right, up next we have the strange case of Michael Taylor. After Michael's wife accused him of cheating on her and described his behavior as increasingly erratic and socially distant, Michael lashed out violently at both his wife and his alleged mistress. His terrifying behavior increased in frequency and intensity, and it was decided that Michael would be seen by priests. Following a full night of exhaustive exorcism sessions, the priests claimed they had pulled upwards of 40 demons from Taylor, but that several still remained inside him and they just sent him home. Well, upon his return, he violently ended the life of his wife and the family poodle. He was eventually picked up by police after wandering the neighborhood streets for hours, soaked in their blood. All right, and at the halfway point in this video, we have David Berkowitz, or the Son of Sam. You may have heard of him. One of America's most notorious serial slayers, claimed to have been possessed during his spree, blaming a demon named Papa Sam for his slaying of 6 New York City residents. After his capture, it was revealed that Papa Sam was his neighbor's dog, which he claimed was possessed by a 6,000-year-old demon who had a thirst for the spilling of human blood. Berkowitz claimed that the spirit locked him in an attic until he agreed to shed blood on its behalf. Super, super creepy. All right, up next we have the case of Roland Doe. After the passing of his aunt, Roland Doe, a 14-year-old boy, turned to a spirit board in an attempt to communicate with her. But apparently he invited in something much more sinister that possessed him. His family soon became overwhelmed by weird occurrences, including odd noises, furniture moving by itself, and objects levitating when Roland was around. The family reached out to a Catholic priest to have an exorcism conducted, during which Roland slashed the priest's arm open with a bed spring that he had ripped out, laughing in enjoyment at the sight of the priest's injuries. A second unsuccessful exorcism observed a shaking bed, flying objects, Roland speaking in a demonic voice, and Roland's aversion to anything sacred or blessed. In a third attempt, Roland's body became covered in strange markings, his mattress began to shake, and he actually broke the nose of one of the priests. Now, after roughly 30 attempts, a final exorcism was said to have finally worked, and Roland went on to live a seemingly normal life afterward. Really? How can someone live normally after that? All right, our next case is the Smurls poltergeist. The Smurl family claimed it was not a person, but in fact their entire home that had been taken over by a poltergeist. Paranormal investigators and demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren claimed the house was occupied by a very powerful demon, performing several failed exorcisms on the home. The demon's alleged attacks on the family included loud banging, foul-smelling odors, shaking mattresses, physical assaults such as being pushed down the stairs and even touched inappropriately, as well as the dog being thrown into a wall. Now, in 1986, after publishing a book about their experiences, the family claimed intense prayer had helped return things to normal. Although, I don't know about you, but that seems like a pretty suspicious timeline for the haunting to suddenly stop. Okay, and up at number 2, we have the case of Anneliese Michel. Perhaps one of the most terrifying exorcism cases in history, Anneliese Michel's story went on to inspire the 2005 film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Michel, a young German woman, had struggled from an early age with mental illness. Diagnosed with epileptic psychosis, she also experienced depression and visual and auditory hallucinations, for which she was hospitalized. Now, with time, her symptoms intensified, growing to include an aversion toward religious iconography. Both she and her Catholic family attributed her condition to demonic possession, and beginning at the age of 22, she underwent an intense 10 months of Catholic exorcism rites. Nearly 70 exorcisms were performed on her in secrecy under the order of the church, ultimately and unfortunately leading to her passing. All right, and up at number 1 in today's video, we have the case of Gottlieben Dietz. In 1842, German villagers noticed strange happenings at the home of a 28-year-old woman named Gottlieben Dietz. Dietz claimed her house was haunted and soon began slipping in and out of trance-like states, but it was only when a religious pastor commenced an exorcism that things truly went wrong. Dietz became violent, requiring physical restraints for 2 torturous years, during which the pastor performed various exorcism rites. Dietz apparently vomited glass, nails, and blood. Finally, it was determined that Dietz's demons were gone, and she claimed that Jesus is victor in her battle.
All right, so let's start off with number 10. Here we have personality disorders. So when a person has changing personality disorders all the time, and if these episodes are very, very sudden, this could be a sign. However, there are several medical disorders that affect a person's mental state, but this definitely is a sign that somebody would be possessed by a jinn. Now, number 9, not just their mental state changing, but also their facial structure actually physically changing. When a person is possessed by a jinn, you can really see that their facial features will change. They'll start twisting and contorting in different ways, so much that the person is not necessarily recognizable and may look like a completely different person at times. Now, moving on to number 8, their voice changing. So people's voices changing, maybe a man could start sounding more like a female or a child, or a woman could start sounding like a man, or sometimes people even growl like beasts, but you'll hear a change in their voice, like a drastic change, and that is a sign of jinn possession. Now, moving on to number 7, there's sudden displays of various different emotions. Now, a possessed person will suddenly start to laugh or cry or just get really angry and upset. And this can happen at some of the most inappropriate times, like laughing at a funeral or getting angry at somebody that just smiled at them. Really, the display of emotion will just happen at times where you can't justify that sort of behavior. So if you see that happening, or if you experience that yourself, could be jinn possession. Moving on to number 6, here we look at sensations in the body. Now, let me break it down for you a little bit. The person that's possessed would complain about sensations that are felt all over the body, like ants crawling up and down the insides of their body or outsides of their body, the temperature of their body increasing, they feel like they're burning up, sometimes they feel really cold, feeling like there's something in their stomach moving around. Also, sometimes you might find that they're able to just speak completely different languages without learning those languages. Now, number 5, halfway in, we look at nightmares. Okay, so a person who is supposedly possessed by a jinn, they're going to experience a lot of horrifying nightmares. And oftentimes these nightmares are completely repetitive. They can also hallucinate and sleepwalk, and those are just some symptoms of jinn possession. Now, next up, we have sleep paralysis at number 4. These people will experience sleep paralysis and feel like actually something is holding them down. They may feel like their throat is being gripped or their mouth is being bound, or sometimes they may feel a physical heavy weight on their chest and they try to move while they sleep, but they just can't. Or at times, sleep paralysis can stop them from screaming for help. But yeah, it's definitely a telltale sign that they are possessed by jinn. Now, number 3 brings us to a person becoming unhygienic and isolated. The person who always maintained a standard of hygiene and is always clean and well groomed, and then all of a sudden they just switch up. Yeah, that could be a sign of jinn possession. Also, you'll find people who are possessed by jinns, they like to stay in places of filth and be completely isolated, and he or she may start to like dirty surroundings. Yeah. All right, moving on to number 2, a big increase in physical strength. Now, this is a big one here. The person who is possessed may have superhuman strength when they are under jinn possession. They can lift up things, very heavy things like cars, and the objects that they lift up are generally a lot heavier than one person alone can actually lift up. And it's said that in some cases, when people are lifting up these heavy objects, they often don't even remember that they did that once the spell of possession breaks. And finally, at number 1, we have depression and hopelessness. Now, the jinn, the evil ones, their aim, according to Islam, is to attack a Muslim's belief system and fill them with hopelessness and depression and start letting them do haram, forbidden things that go against their religion. And this can come as a great wave and happen repeatedly over a period of time. Now, a Muslim is advised to fully put their faith in God, but when a person's at their lowest point, that's when the jinn really push depression and hopelessness and extreme sadness, which we know definitely can lead to other unfortunate outcomes. Number 10 leads us to jinn or jinni. Now, they are often referred to as jinn with a D at the beginning of the word, but they are the most ancient form of demons from Arabic and Islamic traditions. They are very mischievous as well as diabolical, and they are said to have the power to take on the form of any human or animal, and they are created from smokeless fire. Jinn are said to be living in a parallel dimension and can actually see all the humans, but no human can really see them. Unless the jinn wants to be seen, but other than that, no, humans can't see them. When they're not in human form, they can live in anything that they want. Like, they can live in trees, they can live in stones, they can even live in the closet in your bedroom. And humans are advised to never disturb a jinn because it might actually trigger them to go and seek revenge. The demon at number 9 is Wendigo. This is a cold-hearted creature with the face of a skull. Now, if you ever pass through the Great Lake region of the United States or the forests of central Canada, then definitely be aware. This demon is known for roaming in the forest to find human prey, and it has immense strength as well as it has great speed, and it's ready to hunt anyone who crosses its territory. It can mimic the human voice as well as it can lure its prey into the forest. The victims of these demons, they eventually turn into another Wendigo, and that's how this demon increases its number. The demon in the number 8 spot is Krampus. Ooh. Okay, so just like Santa Claus, well, Santa Claus is celebrated for being generous and kind and giving gifts to children and all that. But the children of Central Europe, they're definitely warned to avoid this evil Santa Claus known as Krampus. Each year, this demon on the night of the 5th of December torments the villages until sunrise. And if you were a good child the whole year, well, you're gifted with nice things from Santa Claus. But if you weren't a good child, then Krampus is definitely going to seek you out and hit you with a bundle of birch sticks. And for those children who have been very bad, well, Krampus takes them into the forest with them. And Krampus is a creature that is half goat and half human. And Krampus is sort of like a half goat, half demon type of creature. Yeah, very creepy looking. From there, let's look at Pocong. This spirit, who usually lurks in Indonesia and Malaysia, intends to haunt cemeteries and abandoned houses. In Indonesia, it's called Pocong, and in Malaysia, it's known as Hantu Bungkus. It has a pale and shriveled and eyeless face, and it has a floating body. A soul can become a Pocong if the cloth in which it's buried is not removed from the body after 46 days. And now the removal is supposed to set the soul free from the earth. But if the cloth is not removed, then its feet remain bound to the earth. Now, if you ever come across a Pocong, then the only way to avoid it is to lay down and pretend like you're dead. The next demon that you gotta avoid is Asag. Asag is a horrifying demon from the underworld. Its mission is to stop the god named Ninurta. And he also has an army of rock demons that are going about doing his bidding. Asag was once defeated by Ninurta, but after that, he turned against humankind and began to prey on unsuspecting travelers. It hunts humans and rains disease and plagues on them, and it eventually paralyzes its victim. So yeah, definitely you don't want to cross his path. Manananggal comes next. This is a Filipino demon that takes the form of a lovely woman to lure its victims. Now when the sun goes down, this demon shows its real colors. Its real image is having bat-like withered wings, as well as it has fangs like a vampire, as well as long, sharp claws. Now this monster targets men during the day and preys on pregnant women at night and eats the organs of the babies that are being carried inside of the pregnant woman's belly. Very evil. The next demon to look at is Dullahan. It is the spirit of a man with a missing head and a black robe. Instead of chasing its victims, this demon, who rides on a horse, serves as an omen for ending their life. Whenever the horseman stops his ride, it means that somebody nearby actually will lose their life. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you yourself would, but somebody nearby would. So if you hear somebody's name, then you know that they're going to be this horseman's next victim. It also carries a spine-like whip, and it's suggested to stay at home when there's a full moon outside, because that's when Dullahan really searches and seeks out prey. This ancient Chinese demon known as Nian comes next. Back in ancient China, a Taoist monk by the name of Hongjun Laozu, he came across a village and noticed that the people were locking up their doors to avoid Nian. Now this creature lives high up in the mountains and descends once a year to eat their crops, livestock, and children. Now this demon has the body of a bull and the head of a lion, and Hongjun Laozu, he couldn't see the villagers in this condition, so what he did was he decided to ascend to the mountains on the very evening, and in the nighttime, Hongjun Laozu mounted the Nian and took him to the brink of exhaustion. So the people of the village were spared at that time from the horrible terror of Nyan. Next up, let's talk about fairy changelings. These fairies are tricksters at their best. These fairies have the power to swap human babies with their own. Now, when the mother is not aware or careful, well then the fairy creeps up and kidnaps the baby. Now, the baby that is put in place of the human baby would be kept in the care of the mother, and the mother won't even realize that it's a different baby. Now, if you ever feel something weird with a newborn, then the only trick to figure out the reality here is to boil water in halved eggshells, and this would make the changeling laugh and howl, which would of course reveal the truth. I'm not saying go out there and try it with babies right now, I'm just communicating what they say you're supposed to do. I'm not telling you to do anything. The final demon on this list is Tengu. This demon can fly and run great distances, and the Tengu can be identified by its fiery red skin and its extremely long nose. The person who does not treat Tengu with respect will become its next victim. Many people believe that Tengu is the restless spirits of former priests and heretics who were wronged by members of their faith and are seeking revenge now. This is thought because Tengu is often found kidnapping monks as well as robbing temples and possessing women. It is also very hard to fight this demon because apparently they have some crazy martial arts skills.